Welcome back, guys. We trust you've been staying safe. We just hit 200 subscribers and we thank you so much for your support so far. Kindly subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. Even before you start watching this video, help us hit 1,000 subscribers by end of Christmas this year. Thank you. At the mention of the drug game, names that come to mind first include Pablo Escobar, El Chapo the Almighty, Angel Felix Gallardo, and a whole lot more, including gangs like CJNG. But little did people think that aside men dominating the drug game, there would actually be a time when women would also step up and dominate the drug game. Already, the saying is that what men can do, women can do even better. And it sets the tone right for today's true crime story. And in the past, people thought that the drug game was so far off in South America mostly, and maybe extending to parts of the United States and other neighboring countries. But little did people know that the drug game would actually go worldwide, to the point that today, as at now, the drug game is actually worldwide, and Africa is dealing with it in its own way. And today's true crime story is going to culminate how the drug game has evolved in Africa, to the point that specifically in South Africa, there was a queen pin. Yes, you heard me right. A drug queen pin who dominated the drug game in South Africa during her reign. And allegedly, of course, and she was nicknamed the Black Widow. We would know why she got that name. And also loved by some, hated by some, feared by some. And you see the proportion going. There were diverse views about her life and diverse emotions about her death. How did she live? How did she die? We look at today's true crime story, which would be about Jasmin Simone, aka the Black Widow, and the leader, allegedly, of a gang in the drug game in Durban, South Africa, called the Cartel. If you are ready for this ride, buckle up and let's go. When news spread on a fateful Thursday in 2020 that Simone Jasmin was gunned down on the bluff, there was an outpouring of jubilation and grief in equal parts in Wentworth, south of Durban, South Africa, where she was said to have run one of the most ruthless drug gangs in the city. Allegedly, of course. I keep adding allegedly because her cases were in police or were under investigation by the police, but she was never really convicted. So, till her death. So, you can't really state it out without adding allegedly, out of respect for her being innocent until proven guilty. Now, for people outside of Durban's violent drug underbelly who heard of her for the first time, her murder carried a fascination with the obvious question: how did a woman rise to the apex of a violent drug gang, a trade that would usually be seen to be dominated by men? We would therefore have to go to the genesis of Jasmin to understand why and how she ended up where she was. Jasmin, known as Money on the streets of Wentworth, was introduced to the gang life by a boyfriend, police and community sources had indicated. One of her nicknames was Queen of the South. Yes, you heard me right. Queen of the South. And it was after the popular Mexican telenovela, which many observers said mimicked the 35-year-old's life. And if you've seen that series, you will see that it's going to be very similar to what I'm going to narrate about Jasmin's life. Jasmin's life bears a striking similarity to the main character in Queen of the South, Teresa Mendoza, who comes from a poor background and falls in love with a member of a drug cartel. After falling in love with a drug dealer from Wentworth gang, who was later murdered, Jasmin began dealing in drugs, just like Mendoza also did in that TV series. So you see the similarities. And like Mendoza too, Jasmin then started her drug distributing organization and became very wealthy, which led to more problems in the cutthroat world they had chosen to inhabit. So it's like Queen of the South just happening in real life in Wentworth, Durban, South Africa. And according to sources in her community, after the death of her first boyfriend, Jasmin went on to date 3 other gangsters over a period of time, and all of them were killed in the ongoing drug wars in the Wentworth community, which earned her another nickname, the Black Widow. So now you know how she got the name the Black Widow, and it is rumored that she didn't like to be referred to by that name. Now, while no one ever called her Black Widow to her face, people say Jasmin quite liked the nickname the Queen of the South, but she didn't like the nickname the Black Widow. So much so that the drug gang she ran was also called the Cartel, just like that of Teresa Mendoza. I don't know if she was living out her fantasy from that telenovela or it's just pure coincidence. But as per how things turn out, you see that they had a lot of similarities. The base of operations was in Lansdowne Road in a complex tenement flats called the Barracks, named after the military housing units a community in Wentworth were placed in by the apartheid government before being relocated to Lansdowne Road. It was at Lansdowne Road where Jasmin's power would grow to mythical proportions, and to those who lived away from her territory or gully, she was the feared Black Widow. But for the one who were close to her, they adored her. The people who feared her knew her as the Black Widow, and it was alleged that she was the one behind all the shootings and drugs ravaging Wentworth. But to the people of the barracks and the surrounding homes, where poverty and rampant unemployment lived cheek to cheek with them, she was revered, respected, and given a hero status because she actually helped them financially. She was the one who would pay someone's electricity bill if they got disconnected. She was the one who would come with food parcels to struggling families. In the complex of the barracks, she would hire jumping castles for the children on weekends, buy school uniforms, throw birthday parties for the old, and have Mother's Day and Father's Day events, fully catered with biryani, snacks, and cool drinks. So she was really taking care of the community in which she lived. But this, to some, is still debatable because it's like she was taking with one hand and giving with the other hand. In that, people have argued that in as much as she seemed to be taking care of the community, she was actually the source of one of their biggest problems too. That's the drugs. And she was just giving them back some of the money from the same drugs she was pumping in. That was also creating problems for them, allegedly. But life still went on for her. Now, it wasn't easy being in her position. She had to also rub shoulders with other gangs. And in the drug game, everybody is looking to surpass the other. So definitely, there's a price to being the boss. Now, the price the residents of the barracks, however, had to pay was their patch of land, no bigger than 2 football fields, and it was the center of weekly drive-by shootings. People who had been in her presence spoke of her sassy and sometimes chameleon-like dress sense and mannerism. She dressed most of the time like a tomboy, a community member said. Full Adidas or Nike tracksuits with cavellas. She would talk slang like a gangster when she was around men, but around women, she could be a complete lady. When she was not dressing like a tomboy, she could easily pull off a sexy pencil skirt. According to police sources, Jasmin was not just street smart, but she was also intelligent. And unlike many of the gangsters and the boyfriends she dates, she did not just want to deal drugs, but she wanted to be a wholesaler. And this was coming from a police officer who had very intimate knowledge of the operation of these gangs. And he went on to indicate that within a few short years, Jasmin managed to open a distribution channel and other channels too to dealers in other towns surrounding Wentworth in Durban. She was the main supplier of heroin to these dealers. A police source estimated that the cartel gang raked in around 200,000 rand a day in drug profits, and that Jasmin used the proceeds to invest in property and Uber taxis. However, supplying drugs to a vast network of gangsters opened up problems on many fronts for Jasmin. Sources say that conflicts began to arise. In Wentworth, for example, if anyone questioned her authority, they would be taken out immediately. A licensed firearm carrier, Jasmin would not be scared to point it at an accomplice or foe to make a point. Yeah, and I would understand why to an extent, not to justify for her, but especially she being a woman, she would have to assert her authority in an industry, although illegal, but dominated mostly by men. She wouldn't want anybody to take her for granted or even have the slightest sense of her being weak. Police sources who observed her rise to power say that when she took over a drug corner in Wentworth, it would be preceded by several shootings that took out her enemies like flies. Opening up vast drug supply networks meant that she often got involved with rival drug gangs from other areas too. According to a police source, last year tension between the cartel and drug dealers linked to the Umlazi taxi industry escalated after a drug transaction went sour, and it was alleged that Jasmin's gang killed a prominent member of that other gang linked to the taxi industry and dumped his body in a field. Members of the other gang retaliated and shot up a flat in barracks with AK-47s, believing that Jasmin and her gang were present there. And in the months that would follow, Jasmin and her cartel gang had faced intense pressure from the recently established anti-gang unit, seeming to shut them down, but to no avail. Now, several members of the gang, including an allegedly corrupt Wentworth policeman linked to them, were also arrested. So, in as much as the security forces were doing their bit, with organizations like this, they seek to penetrate and infiltrate the security forces itself, such that they have first-hand information of whatever you are putting together to bring them down, and they put proactive measures in place to get ahead. That's how smart Jasmin was. And no wonder the police alluded to the fact that she was not just street smart, but she was also intelligent. Now, several members of her gang, including an allegedly corrupt policeman, were arrested, like I said earlier, and in September of the year, she would end up being gunned down. The anti-gang unit swooped on the Wentworth police station, where they arrested a warrant officer called Brian James, whom investigators believed was linked to the cartel gang. It came just weeks after the anti-gang unit had organized crime intelligence and worked together around the clock to arrest other members of the gang. That included Jasmin, other people like Carl Pretorius, known as Para, and Tyrell Martin, Chad Marias, Mtendeni Masilva Koza, and Tyrese Pretorius, known as Mini. Jasmin was given bail while the others were kept in custody. Take note of this, it will come up again. They were all facing charges of murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder, and they were expected back in court the following month. Despite the many precautions Jasmin took to protect herself in the past few weeks, like she never using her own vehicles to travel, getting other people to book her, hailing cabs and also Ubers, and never sticking to a particular routine, these didn't prove to be enough, as her end came on a fateful Thursday in October 2020 in the emergency room at Durban Hospital. Now, this is how things played out. Minutes after someone else hired an Uber for Jasmin, as was her modus operandi, the Uber car came and the car picked up Jasmin on Marine Drive. As soon as she entered the car, she was shot by assassins who, according to sources, had been staking out her house for days. After doing a U-turn to catch up with the Uber, the assassin opened the passenger door and shot her at least 6 times. According to a detective who was on the scene, Jasmin was hit twice in the chest, thrice in the stomach, and once in the leg. Police found 5 shell casings on the scene and 1 full bullet. Now, a complicated web which had been woven by Jasmin and her affiliates is what had kept investigators with a long list of possible suspects. Now, in Wentworth, the cartel is involved in an ongoing war with the Hollywood gang, the Drain Rats, the G-Section, and another gang called the Destroyers. And outside of Wentworth, Jasmin allegedly had a price on her head from a gang called the Umlazi Drug Dealers, and according to police sources, internally, Jasmin was also facing a mutiny by members of her gang who were behind bars and were suspicious as to why she was given bail and they were not. You remember I told you to note that down, because when they were all arrested, some way somehow she got bail. So it was rumored that the other people who didn't get bail, the other members of her gang who were refused bail, became suspicious and were wondering why she alone was given the bail and they weren't. I don't know, to an extent, it was rumored that they felt that she had sold them out. So according to police, there were too many people out there with a motive to kill her, and it could have been anyone. To date, there hasn't been any communication officially that I'm aware of that this case has been solved and her killers have been found. But Jasmin has been buried all the same. What do you think about the life of this young lady, which was cut short abruptly due to drug-related gang violence? What do you think of the drug game in Africa and its impact on the continent and on the world for that matter? Leave your comments in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Turn on post notifications. Check out our other videos and leave your comments on them as well. Thank you. And as always, stay safe out there.